Don't forget, you can reach the latest episode of Potomac Watch anytime. Just ask your smart speaker, Play the Opinion Potomac Watch Podcast. That is, Play the Opinion Potomac Watch Podcast.
From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
Welcome back. I'm Paul Gigot here on Potomac Watch with Joe Sternberg and Elliot Kaufman. Notable, Elliot, that both Israel and the United States undertook airstrikes inside Syria. The Israelis acknowledging through their media that Israel Defense Forces had struck chemical weapons production facilities, what they identified as that, so that those don't fall into the hands of the new groups. And the United States also taking some strikes against jihadist groups and ISIS followers and so on. The big U.S. interest, and obviously Israeli interest too, but a major U.S. interest in Syria going forward is to prevent the creation of a jihadist state in Syria, or for that matter, jihadist enclave.
Yes, and I think the U.S. will need to be very cautious with this new regime. There will be some pressure to delist it from the terrorist list right away, and I think that would be a mistake because that's a big card, and we can ask for certain things before we do that. One thing might be handing over whatever chemical weapons remain. That's big. Another, protection of certain minorities, Kurds, Christians, perhaps the Alawites themselves. So there are various benchmarks that could be set to test the seriousness of these rebel groups. I mean, HTS didn't separate itself from Al-Qaeda because it found liberalism. It separated itself because it found nationalism and cared more about defeating Assad than about global jihad.
But that's okay.
That's a positive step. You're right.
I mean,
right.
if they focus on rebuilding as opposed to exporting jihad, that's a big upgrade.
For sure. And one actor here that's worth talking about is Turkey. What is its interest? Does it want stability, or does it want to exploit the chaos to attack the Kurds? And could it restart a civil war after this? So there will be a lot of actors the U.S. will have to be talking to here. Some serious risks on all sides.
I would add one other thing we would want, if we can get it, is the ouster of the Russians from that base on the coast, the Mediterranean Sea. The rebels should have a new government. Sorry, Joe, I used that phrase, it's the word rebel, but the new government, whatever it is, should have no love for the Russians because the Russians brutalized them with their barrel bombs, particularly the campaign in Aleppo. It was grotesque, and I think they should want to oust the Russians. So that should be one of our goals, no question about it. Joe, the U.S. base in Syria, about 900 servicemen and women, its mission basically has been to prevent the revival of ISIS or other Islamic groups. We're working with the Kurdish groups, as the Syrian Defense Forces, which control some land in the north and east of Syria. That's important because the Kurds have literally tens of thousands of ISIS fighters and families in detention there.
Yes. I think, again, this is an example of how we just have to prepare for things to get very messy and complicated as we figure out how we're going to deal with this new government, whatever form that ends up taking, what our relationship with some of these groups are going to be. And I think that, the point of this is that the U.S. does have interests there. And I think that history has shown that withdrawal from that region is never really a long-term viable option for America. And so I think that, we already have that presence there. I think we need to be open to the possibility that there is going to be some role for the U.S. and our allies in helping to stabilize the region moving forward, and particularly working with allied groups like the Kurds who can sort of help us advance our interests in the region. So, I think that certainly this is all possible because the Assad regime has fallen. And so the key point for Washington has to be thinking about what are we going to do to take advantage of these opportunities and new possibilities that open up, and what is going to be the American interest in the region. How do we advance that, and are we prepared to admit that that is going to probably mean presence there, that withdrawal is not going to be an option.
Well, you should talk to Donald Trump, Joe, because Donald Trump suggested in recent Truth Social posts that we should get out totally, have no interests in Syria. It's not our fight. And certainly the idea that we would pick sides in that civil war had long since passed any opportunity there or any good we might have been able to do there. But as for the protecting U.S. interests, particularly focusing on the blocking any jihadist enclave or state, is very significant to Elliot. I know I've already spoken to people who are going to try to talk to President-elect Trump and say, look, sir, don't make a precipitous decision about pulling out those 900 servicemen and women from that base, because this is an important place for us to have leverage in what happens next in Syria.
That's right. And also to stop it from spreading. One thing that those 900 troops do is protect Jordan from the spread of jihadists and from Iranian smuggling. Both of those elements are looking to undermine Jordan, which is, one of the few places in the region that usually you can count on for some stability. These days, less so, and people are worried. And so the theory is that with not so many troops, the U.S. can accomplish rather a lot there. And by pulling them out now, we would lose that and lose our ability to really even be at the table. Russia is at that table. Even Iran is showing remarkable flexibility, all of a sudden talking about how they never really wanted to fight the rebels. They only wanted to fight ISIS. They're going to be looking to make some sort of pragmatic deal, restore their smuggling routes, their influence. If we want to stop that, we can't pull everything out at the jump.
All right. The issue of Trump and Iran is one for the future show, Elliot. So we will leave it at there today. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Elliot. Thanks you all for listening. We're here every day on Potomac Watch. Thanks for listening.